It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single...
She's an icon. She's a legend.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife.
You know who said that? Jane Austen. The Queen. Pretty dope way to start a story, right?
Welcome to A Niche Retelling, the podcast where we explore all the ways old stories are made new again. It is a truth universally acknowledged that I am your host, Jasmine Garcia, and joining me today are...
I'm Matt Madrano.
I'm Shamila Karanakar.
And I'm Sam Marchioni, not in possession of a good fortune.
Are any of us?
Not at all.
In this economy, please. Let's face it, realistically speaking, a modern Mrs. Bennet would probably just keel over.
Yeah.
And as you can probably guess from all the jokes we're making, we are going to be discussing an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, specifically the recent rom-com adaptation, Fire Island. As always, I do like to start with, what is everyone's relationship to the original Jane Austen classic?
I'm a huge fan of Bridget Jones' Diary, and that's it.
You know what? Same. I mean, I have a lot more than that, but same. Bridget Jones' Diary is great. Other than the fact that it tried to convince the world that Renee Zellweger is in any way fat. But what can you do?
That no.
The Audis were a wild time to grow up as a plus-size person, let me tell you.
Period.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Okay, so I read kiddified versions of Pride and Prejudice when I was a child. I mean, not like child, like high school age or something, but you know, young enough that there were illustrations and they kind of glossed over the full implications of things like Lydia running away with Wickham. But I've actually been more a fan of the transformative Austen adaptations. Mm-hmm. Like, I both read a comic book version and saw the movie version of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I'm a big fan of the TV miniseries Lost in Austen, which is about... It's basically Jane Austen isekai, and I like Austenland... And I love the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I loved the Lizzie Bennet Diaries enough that I tried to do my own Christine Daae-themed spin on that basic premise.
So this was yet another great illustrated classics that I read when I was a kid. I think I was around 12 at the time. And then in high school, we covered it more in depth. And we did it in conjunction with Romeo and Juliet. And we pretty much had like all sorts of creative assignments to go with it. Like for my final assignment for that particular unit, I actually did a comic. So I drew the proposal rejection scene from the Keira Knightley version of Pride and Prejudice. I wish I still had it. That was pretty much the only version that I grew up with other than like Pride and Prejudice, and that was just like a cultural reset for me.
As for me, funny thing is, the first time I remember ever even hearing about Pride and Prejudice was an episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, as in the sitcom with Melissa Joan Hart, yes, that one. Because Jane Austen was her favorite author, actually, the characters. And
was it really? I don't remember that.
It was, yeah. I, at some point, was just watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch pretty much every day because they were airing it in its entirety on ABC Family. So. And there was one episode where she was dating this guy and he couldn't even name her favorite author. And at the end, he gets her a copy of Pride and Prejudice to make it better. My first proper foray into it was, of course, like seeing all the trailers for the Keira Knightley, Matthew McFadden version, which my other friend, who is a librarian, not you, Shami, once pointed out that someone had said, it's basically just Austen meets Bronte, and it's just like, yeah, that's why we like it. Which, kind of, yeah, I had never thought of it that way until she said it, but it's so true. And then when I was about 13... When one of the assignments was to just pick a book to read. And when my initial book got rejected, I was just like, okay, fine, you think this is too kiddie? I will read Pride and Prejudice then. You know, I did enjoy it, though it's definitely kind of heavy for a 13-year-old, even one who was as voracious of a reader as I was, and still kind of am. Ever since then, I just keep on running into different adaptations of it. So, the Keira Knightley version, Pride and Prejudice, because I was obsessed with Aishwarya Rai around that time. And also, speaking of transformative ones, there is this novel version called Most Ardently, and basically the Bennets are Latina, and it's gay. And no joke, the best version of Mr. Collins, because he actually has like a real character arc in that. And you really do buy into his and Charlotte's relationship in that book. So I do very much recommend that. And of course, Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I mean,
yeah!
Exactly.
Okay, I want to reiterate what I said earlier. I do a lot of research for when I do shows like this. So within the last week, I've read the book. I've seen.
Yay!
I've
I've been meaning to reread it.
The performance of Keira Knightley version.
Yes.
Even one of my favorite versions, which Sam brought up a second ago, and I don't know how this wasn't a bigger hit. I think she had just come off with Cinderella.
I loved that movie. I have a massive Pride and Prejudice fangirl who hates it because she feels like it's not a good adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, but I'm like...
My objection was actually that it was a bad adaptation of Pride and Prejudice and zombies. Like, they worked in the Antichrist, and I was like...
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah,
that misses the point. It's Pride and Prejudice with zombies.
Yeah.
You're overthinking it.
A little bit. I will definitely grant you that. I guess they thought maybe would make it fit the period more.
Who knows?
Religious is just all over the place.
Yeah.
We already had to do.
My opinion is anytime you try to do more with Wickham, you're getting it wrong. Wickham is not somebody you need to expand.
Yeah, I got it.
I do feel sorry for Lydia in saying that, because, in the original novel, that means she's stuck with him forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a bunch of stories that kind of address that. It's, like, I know I found one called Mrs. Wickham. Like, it's an audio drama.
Yeah, and I never finished either reading it or watching it, but I'm aware of Death Comes to Pemberley.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that has something to do with Lydia and Wickham. It was mainly on my radar because Jenna Coleman played Lydia in the TV adaptation.
And also I know there's another murder mystery involving Mr. Wickham that just recently came out. So I'll definitely be reading that. So yeah, we're all pretty familiar with this. What is it about this story that we keep on coming back to it, do you think? Because I feel like that is something that we should definitely address with this podcast. Like, why are these stories so iconic like that?
So do you want me to give, like, the academic take that was ingrained in me during my master's class? I took a seminar called Feminist Criticism that engaged in this topic specifically.
I want you to give whatever you think. Like, so if it requires you filtering it through that, please do.
So we didn't technically cover Pride and Prejudice in this seminar, but we did cover Jane Eyre, and Jane Eyre has the same kind of connotation of Pride and Prejudice in that these were major turning points of shifting away from marriage as an economic transaction to being about an emotional relationship. These were moments of agency for women where it was about marrying for love. It was about finding a partner who was in some way complementary to you and who made you better. And yes, of course, they were always gentlemen and they had a decent income. And the case of Mr. Rochester, maybe he doesn't deserve you, but you love him anyway. And that's for another time. Yeah. But
yes,
I think the reason that Pride and Prejudice specifically works so well is because not only does it have this great instance of two people falling in love because they're people who complement each other well, but we also, Lizzie Bennet is just a really good author insert character or reader insert character because she's so fun and witty. She's like the idealized version of everybody, but also Darcy does tap into that brooding, misunderstood, Byronic hero in the most sanitized way. Like, Charlotte Bronte threw shade at Jane Austen for being all tidy and cutesy and I guess basically the Hallmark movie version of fiction.
You know, I never thought of it being her kind of saying that, but you're so right, and damn, that's a burn.
My mother watches a lot of Hallmark movies, and I'd come down and like, have they had the dry kiss in the gazebo yet? And my mom's like, don't talk like that. It's a wet kiss. And I'm like, Mom, I know for a fact you have never watched Bridgerton. You do not know what a wet kiss in a gazebo looks like.
Oh my god. And the funny thing is, there are Hallmark movies based off of Pride and Prejudice.
Of course there are.
There's a Christmas one.
I was going to say all of them, but all right.
I mean, yes, there is the kind of unescapable fact that pretty much every rom-com out there kind of tries to invoke Pride and Prejudice, even if it's not a direct adaptation. But they so rarely get it right, because, as Sam has pointed out before, they are not a fan of the bicker kiss, which, let's face it, most of the bicker kisses are trying to kind of play off of this. So what are they getting wrong there?
You don't get to kiss until you stop the bickering. So many rom-coms are like, bicker, kiss, immediately go back to bickering. Like, I'll admit, I'm still a sucker for Princess Diaries too, but it's very annoying that Mia and Nicholas kiss and then immediately go back to fighting.
Yeah, that's very, very fair. Like, I do wonder if part of it is just because for a lot of people, obviously not everybody, including people on this podcast, there is just that moment where the attraction is too strong to ignore, but you're still too mad to stop fighting. At least that is what they're trying to indicate, I guess. Maybe it's just the environment I grew up in or whatever, but I honestly see that a lot of just people so attracted to each other, but they hate that they're attracted to each other. Oh, so I feel
why this person?
Which can be fun in fiction, but yes, realistically, that sounds like a nightmare. Oh, yeah. But I think you've got it about right there, Sam. There is just something about a story of two people who, in spite of what they initially thought, they learn and kind of grow together to be each other's proper partner. Was kind of a game changer, especially in terms of just telling love stories in general. Any other thoughts?
Well, Jane Austen is known for social commentary and stuff, but it's just really biting here when she's talking about economic stability versus respect and compatibility. And one thing that I did like about Darcy's character arc, like when he does get that, when Lizzie does rip into him, he actually takes a step back and reflects on himself, and then he goes explain it to her in this letter, listing all of what Elizabeth was addressing to him, and then his explanation for that, and he is actively trying to do better by that.
Yeah, and I think that is the dream, isn't it? Finding somebody who is willing to admit when they are wrong.
Yeah, so Austen pretty much said, I'm not gonna fix him, he is gonna fix himself.
Yes. I love that meme. It goes around on Tumblr.
You can have, I can fix him, or you can have, I'm going to fix myself for her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty flippin' dreamy, isn't it? He'll fix himself if he knows what's good for him. You know, how...
Exactly.
How universal is that?
Himself, or, other people will, or maybe, you'll figure out that you need to do a little fixing as well.
And, going back to Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies of all things, part of why I do enjoy it is because they took that compatibility and then added fight choreography to it. I'm a sucker for partners who spar. Yeah. Even though she was actively trying to kill him in that one scene. But, I mean, considering what she had figured out, I can't say I blame her. I mean, who hasn't had that kind of argument with their partner? One.
If your belligerent sexual tension does not lead to a sexually charged fight, I don't want belligerent sexual tension.
And also justice for Mrs. Bennet, because while she goes about things in a very wrong way, she is actually way more right than Mr. Bennet.
Oh, you should definitely watch Lost in Austen then. I think that would... Alex Kingston plays Mrs. Bennet, and she's fascinating.
I love that. I do love that. We do love Alex Kingston.
Wait, I think I actually cast her as Mrs. Bennet for one of my fan casts.
You did!
Yes!
Oh my god! Yes! You can tell a good chunk of our friendship had been these fan casts. Yes! Sam? Oh my god, that is such a funny coincidence. Pride and Prejudice, it's, what can we say that hasn't already been said here? So let's get on to this retelling that is kind of what I sometimes call a meta retelling, because the original text clearly exists within the movie's universe, because the very first line of the movie is the same, pretty much the same as the novel.
I'll admit, I'm not a fan of the meta-ness of that. Like, I understand that you can't really have a world where Pride and Prejudice does not exist because it's had such an impact on our modern romance, but I think in this case I feel like it was a mistake to bring attention to the fact that Noah knows Jane Austen intimately well, because Noah feels like a character who's too smart not to realize what's happening.
That's a fair point there.
Part of me thinks he's that kind of person who, in the back of his head, is just like, oh my god, Pride and Prejudice is happening to me. Not even on a level like he's cognizant on, but just like it's there.
It's subconscious.
Like, I would like to think so, yes. And I will say, I think part of why they even put it in is the same reason why actually when I was doing my own, I was calling it Pride Parades and Prejudice, actually.
Oh, that's cute.
Yes. I was going to have my Lizzie character kind of comment on that, pretty much for the same exact reason they commented on it in the movie. Like we said in the Little Mermaid episode, I keep manifesting these things. How do I keep doing this?
I don't know, but while you're doing that, can we manifest? I have this draft version of a modern Phantom of the Opera in my back pocket. I'd really like somebody to help me get it into the light.
I would very much love that. Either
we'll talk afterwards. I'll have your people call my people.
Yay! But yeah, I do think that was the reason why, because it is the kind of thing that for a gay retelling, you kind of have to address it if you're gonna address it at all.
Plus, I would argue as Pride and Prejudice on an absolute surface level. Pride and Prejudice is absolutely probably the straightest thing anyone has ever read.
Yeah.
It's up there, yes.
Most heterosexual thing. So if you're gonna flip it on its head and make it gay, I think that gives you some license to say, like, this exists.
But you're not wrong. Like, Noah does come off as very intelligent, so you would think he'd be more genre savvy. So I do like Matt's headcanon that in the back of his mind he's thinking about it.
He just won't admit it out loud.
Or he's too drunk and or high.
More than once.
Yeah, but he still does not make that connection. It's giving me, I won't say I'm in love vibes.
Yeah.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
I mean, is that not part of the appeal of this story when you think about it?
I guess so.
There's probably decent overlap between kids who grew up on Hercules and kids who grow up to love Pride and Prejudice in some way. Moving along there, one thing I really enjoyed about this movie was, the Bennett analogs are basically a found family, which is very, very gay of them. And also, I just loved the way they translated each of the Bennett sisters, because not all modern adaptations even do that, first off. But also, I did just have a lot of fun with how accurate it felt, but also it felt like they were just kind of adding a little more depth to it, if that makes sense.
I get it, and I do really, I enjoy all of their performances. I did feel a little bad for Torian Miller as Max, because it felt like he was getting the least to do.
Yes.
And I was also a little twitchy because he was the only black member of the family.
Yeah, I definitely felt that for sure.
Keegan is black too. But yeah, Torian is obviously, he's black, he's fat, and when you're comparing it to all the character arcs of the other characters, he kind of comes off a bit one note, unfortunately.
Yes. One note and undesirable. And I get that Mary was, the nerdy sister. Yeah. She was the quiet one who wanted to stay inside and read. But still, they could have at least gotten him a boyfriend. It did kind of fall into stereotypes.
And honestly, it is a little bit it does give factor anti-blackness in Asian American communities. It does give me that kind of vibes, and I never like seeing that.
Oh, of course. Although I was even weirdly thinking I don't know how they would have pulled this off, but the guy that Noah was with in the beginning, up with one of his friends. I don't know,
the guy in his bed. I'm sorry.
Yes, the guy in his bed. Yes. But Yeah, you're right. Like, that's the tricky thing. Like, it felt accurate to the character he was kind of mirroring, but you're right. There's definitely something to that. It did make me a little uncomfy.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish, like, if they had just given him a slightly bigger character arc, it would have been fine. But Luke and Keegan being ex-theater gays for Kitty and Lydia just makes way too much sense.
Yeah, I will say, Thomas Matos, I was staring at them like, how is your back not killing you? Because their posture, oh my god.
I know.
The way they were standing all the time with their spine so curved, I'm like, does that not hurt?
How have they not thrown their backs out?
Well, no. I mean, it is Fire Island.
So for Canadians like me who have no idea about Fire Island is, I do know that it's a gay vacation spot, but like maybe you can explain to me like the significance of about Fire Island in terms of the LGBT community.
Well, as the only dude in the room who lives in California, I've never been to Fire Island, but
yeah, the funny thing is, I grew up on Long Island, and that movie coming out was the first I had even heard of it.
I had heard of Fire Island because at one point SNL did a sketch, because apparently on Bravo there was like a reality show that followed a bunch of gay guys around Fire Island going wild, and then SNL juxtaposed it with a bunch of lesbians in Cherry Grove who were, you know, doing puzzles of wolves and rocking their multicultural babies to sleep and sobbing emotionally.
Oh my god. What?
Like, there's this great moment of Aidy Bryant and Cecily Strong playing a gay couple, and they're arguing, but it's very low key. It's very gentle. We're expressing our feelings.
I
would absolutely believe that Bowen Young wrote that sketch.
Yeah,
I can see it.
I don't know who wrote that sketch, but it feels like a Bowen Young sketch.
Wasn't that the summer before they even shot Fire Island? So maybe it's like...
Oh, it was several years ago. It was before Scarlett Johansson had hosted 5 times and married Colin Jost. I'm sidetracked.
That's what podcasts are for.
Well, as someone who's in LA and is basically gay people run this town, so it's
jealous.
We have a similar thing. There's a lot of like Palm Springs type of things going around. That's like our version of Fire Island. But honestly, he gives enough exposition in the beginning where it's like, it's basically gay Disneyland, and then they go into that really good cover of Pure Imagination.
Yeah, that was so good.
That was a great cover.
Yeah.
That was a great choice. I was like, you could do Dua Lipa, you could do Donna Summer, you could do anybody else, and nobody ever thought of Pure Imagination. Or nobody would have thought of Pure Imagination, and then it comes up and you're like, it's perfect.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination.
Yeah. I did do a little bit of research myself. So basically, yeah, it does seem like everything Noah said about the history of Fire Island is about it. It was kind of a safe haven back when it was borderline illegal for any of us to exist. So that's part of what made it so special and what's kind of made it a traditional vacation spot.
So again, as the dude in the room, and since this is mostly a movie with 99% dudes and Margaret Cho.
Actually, it's a funny thing. So apparently people were getting up in arms about whether or not the movie passed the Bechdel-Wallace test, and Alison Bechdel herself was like, the movie gets a pass, I say so.
Yes.
I get where they were going with that, because Twitter's Twitter, but even before it went to Hades and back. But you gotta understand, like, this is so niche and so specific that I was like, can't we just have this one?
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Like, I'm not gonna complain.
If you've ever seen a Black Lady sketch show on HBO, the creator, Robin Thede, she's talked about how she wanted to make a comedy show that is culturally specific but universally funny.
Exactly.
And I think the same basic framework has applied here to Fire Island, and for the most part it works. Like, honestly though, my favorite joke in the entire movie is their heads up Marissa Tomei bit.
Yes. And
No! What the fuck?
What's wrong with you?
Do the scene after this. Don't you even think. Do not pass on this icon.
No. The defense is wrong.
No, the defense is wrong.
No.
No.
The defense is wrong. And
know.
Joe Pesci, how do you know?
And she goes, I'm positive.
I'm positive.
Penelope Cruz.
Oh, my biological clock is ticking like this. And the way this case is going, I ain't never getting married.
Partially because I genuinely do not understand how Will could not know a reference to My Cousin Vinny when he is a lawyer, and My Cousin Vinny is like one of the most beloved legal movies.
I will point out that he doesn't even know what Legally Blonde is, however.
Yeah. He's not that savvy.
What, like it's hard?
Oh, he wishes.
There's just so many like little, they sound like ad-libs and that are just so great, where it's like, can I trade someone a Crest White strip for a Pret pill? Or like, he flirts with all of us, shut up. There's just this all sort of, it almost feels like a Judd Apatow movie that cut off at the exact moment where before the jokes stop being funny.
Yeah, I can see that, which is interesting you bring that up considering how this was kind of pitted against Bros last year in so many ways. Yeah.
I didn't even see Bros because the marketing for it was just so obnoxious. Like, that felt like a trailer that was 90% people screaming at each other, and I'm like, on one hand, yeah, that is how a lot of the queer community feels like it reacts to each other sometimes, but
it's a lot more than that, but yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. And I do want to give it a chance at some point.
And it wasn't even really a fair battle because one was on Hulu and one was going to theaters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that blows.
Like, we couldn't have just had two gay rom-coms without the infighting? No? Really? Okay. But getting back to the movie itself, can I just say, Howie was the most relatable character. It actually hurts how much I was like, oh, same. I'm sorry, honey.
I wanted to wrap him up in a blanket and give him a hug.
As any good Jane makes you, you know? Which I gotta say, yeah, he wants the epic romance and he hasn't had a boyfriend in spite of being 30, and I'm like, oh no, it's me as an Asian man.
Oh.
And it's a really good performance from Bowen Yang, because at one point he got criticized by B.D. Wong for playing into stereotypes of gay Asian men, and he made a tweet that I believe he has since deleted, talking about how even though he's done a ton of characters on SNL, a lot of them are some flavor of himself. But this was soft and sweet and dramatic and still had that little twinge of Bowen Yang's personality underneath. Like, I love at the end when they do the full rom-com cliche and he's like, too much. Like, that's one of my favorite meta jokes ever.
Yeah, it's like, you know, he is very much the Jane, but he has a little bit of sass in him, which I think is refreshing.
Yeah, and I kind of love with his character, he's kind of like brings like Jane's insecurities all to the surface, and you can really see him sort of struggling with Noah's ideas about love and relationships.
I mean, it's interesting to note he's actually, when you look at Wikipedia, it's noted that he's not just based on Jane, he's also based on Charlotte.
I definitely could see that too, because otherwise there is no Charlotte. Because
it's giving I'm 27 and I have no prospects and I don't want to be a burden to my parents, and I'm like, girl, same.
Girl, same indeed. The more things change, huh?
The more they say the same.
Yeah, I think that might be another reason why Pride and Prejudice just continues to exist, because we're still living... Well, we're not in a landed gentry system anymore, but capitalism is...
the worst.
It's capitalism.
Capitalism is feudalism in a suit. I've said it numerous times. Obviously, feudalism is not relevant to Pride and Prejudice, but still. But isn't it, though?
Well, I mean, back then, landed gentry, they'd have tenants. I know this because at one point I had a Regency expansion CC pack on The Sims that was...
Nice.
We don't need to get into it.
I mean, that sounds
basically, yeah, you own the land, you lease it out, we rent everything, we own nothing.
I think deep down we all kind of wish there was a nice rich person of your preferred gender.
Cancel student debt, Joe, please.
Yes. We're begging you.
So the
casual reminder, this is a leftist podcast. Die mad about it.
No. So the scene where they meet Bingley and everybody else, that's lovely. No.
Yep.
Right.
This was a solid Bingley.
I was shocked to find out that the actor James Scully, he played JD in the Paramount series version of Heathers, because those two characters are about as far apart as you could get, because Charlie is a sweetheart.
so sweet that he's kind of a doofus.
He's like
Yeah,
a little
like, kind of the whole
golden
thing.
retriever in
Somehow
human
we found a
form.
doctor who is also a himbo.
Bless.
Whackity schmackity do.
That does contribute to like one of the few things I wasn't a big fan of, like the addition of Reese.
Yeah, I didn't get the
his
Reese
ex
thing
gets
either.
flown in, and he decides to get back with him because he played the sympathy card of Lyme disease.
Charlie, baby.
Oh.
Or maybe that was what was his name? That was Cooper's way of telling their house, like, you're trash and I'm gonna fly in the guy.
No, because like Charlie mentions
And he's too
that
nice
Reese
to turn him down.
came and told him all that. And yeah, it definitely, I absolutely believe that Cooper brought Reese in to cockblock Howie, but
Cooper might be my least favorite Caroline ever.
Yeah.
Caroline and Lady Catherine.
Yes.
Yes.
Because, there's a lot of blending here, and I do respect that, because a good retelling knows when to mash
Whittle
things
down
up.
the extraneous.
Exactly. You put it so perfectly. Thank you for being smarter than me, Sam.
I'm not smarter than you. I've just had I've spent way too much money making me seem like I'm smarter.
Fair enough.
When arguably the smarter thing would have been not to spend the money.
College.
Don't go to grad school unless it's fully funded, kids. Grad school is a scam. Academia is a pyramid scheme.
This is why I always get subsidies.
Oh, yeah.
But back to the Lyme disease, weirdly enough, I do love all of the little callbacks in this movie, because I'm a sucker for a good callback, because like Max mentioned something about, ticks and their best friend Lyme disease, and then there's the sometimes callback, which was probably my favorite of the callbacks, because
so cute.
I know, because that moment where Howie and Charlie kiss, right when it drops, sometimes that is why rom-coms exist. That moment is why rom-coms exist.
That's the thing. I was like half on the performance, where like I kind of bought it because James Scully he's basically playing a Labrador. And
yes.
But in that moment where he's giving the monologue to Howie on the dock, I was like, is this guy a good actor? Damn. In that moment, I just bought it.
You have to be a good actor for that scene to land. And another thing I do enjoy about this movie is it's one of the few Austen adaptations that really calls Bingley out on his shit. Listen, we love Bingley. We do love Bingley. But he was a weakling for letting them manipulate him like this.
Half the time I was just ready to yell at him, grow a spine!
It was not a good look.
No, especially when his ex was like, that little Asian guy, you think he likes him? It's like,
I was ready to attack him.
Oh, me too. Because, and I mean, the thing is, that's one of the things that makes this a really good retelling, is that it basically takes back all the social commentary and ands that shit. It's like, okay, what would that look like with this particular group of Bennets? Shami, again, being the resident librarian, provided me with a lot of articles, and what keeps on coming up. Dolkin Booster even said, like, when there's no straight people to oppress us, then we all kind of start oppressing each other for other things, because
no blacks, no femmes, no Asians. That's the recurring
fats,
theme that comes up.
Actually,
because
just for accuracy, it's actually, and I hate that this still exists,
Yeah.
no fats, no femmes, no Asians.
Yeah.
And
Is that like it's still a typical thing?
Yes, very much.
I was afraid that you were going to say something like that.
And we also get the fetishization in the Mr. Collins analog, who's like, I bet I can tell what kind of Asian you are.
Oh my.
No, you
You
can't.
never say that out loud. That I know it plays into like how obtuse and clueless and foot in the mouth syndrome Collins is, but you just do not say that.
Yeah, it's just.
Oh my god. Okay, vocabulary time. He is called a rice queen.
Yes, I heard that. I was like,
Yay.
I love the. I mean, I love the term because it's
It might
just
be slightly
bitchy
late.
enough, but I hate that it's needed. I hate that the term is needed.
It's a thing. It's very much a thing, and they very much comment on the thing.
I believe it, unfortunately.
That's what I love about this too, is that it's not just like, it's not about just a bunch of, and they're not even catty, but like catty gay guys. It really is just like how we oppress each other. in that sort of system.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And it's not even just in that system. Like, you see that sort of stuff all the time, especially right now when it does feel like a lot of branches of the gay community are kind of being pitted against each other because
and then you find out that some of them aren't even gay. They're just pretending to be gay so that they can be oppressing other queer people.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Sorry, there's so much people explaining anti-trans bullshit on my feed right now.
Yeah, and it just frustrates me because it's just like, you do realize that less than a decade ago, the very same people who are telling you to hate trans people were hating you. They will go right back to that once they're done.
It ain't pretty, no.
And it isn't.
It's only a matter of time before you get hit, so.
And, like, so, yes, this feels like a very timely movie, even though it doesn't really address the transphobia aspect of it, but, like, it's the very same, like, okay, why are we fighting with each other over this stuff when we should be fighting the people who are actually making our lives harder?
Part of me is like thinking now about the situation with Luke, because I feel like it was a very specific choice that Luke was the one white member of the family.
Yeah.
And it was Luke that ended up in the Lydia position of having the revenge porn happen to them.
Yep, which was the one thing that... There were a couple of things that reminded me of Lizzie Bennet Diary specifically.
Yeah. That was the big one.
Yeah, that was the big one.
That's the thing. I never understood why... Because he spends like a good part of the first half of the movie saying, like, I'm never going to get laid. Or I have to try, like, really, really hard to get laid. It's Fire Island, and he looks the way he does. He will get laid before all of them.
Sad but true.
So it's like, you don't even have to try as hard as you do.
It's kind of a point, because, like, we're talking about how they explain that, you know, when there's no straight people around, we start turning on each other. And in that regard, Luke, it kind of felt like Luke was the one who jumped ship the most.
Like,
yeah.
Is he on the same level as, like, Cooper and Charlie? No, because there's a class thing going on with Cooper and Charlie.
That too.
But it definitely seems like Dex did single in on him as the one who could most easily be turned after Noah pushed Dex away.
Which, you know, Dex is clearly very predatory. And so predators like that are very good at figuring out people's weaknesses and who's most likely to be able to be swayed from the pack. By the way, why do I get a really terrible feeling that the friend that Will keeps referring to was Charlie?
Oh.
Like with how protective he is, it would make a weird amount of sense. But on the other hand, then why is Charlie still so trusting? Like, I'm torn on it. Like, a part of me has a feeling about it, but the part of me is like,
maybe it's a coping mechanism?
I don't think it's Charlie, just because it seems almost like Charlie was a little protective of Will when they found out Dex was there. Like, he was checking in to make sure Will was okay. So I think, even though they didn't specifically invoke it, I think the implication was that either Dex moved in on Will in a way that Will is still not comfortable with, or Will has a sibling that Dex moved in on.
Which would make sense considering he has a Georgina, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could see that too. Like a part of me was just like, interesting. Wickham is just always such a punchable bastard.
But that performance, though.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that you want to punch him and you have no idea who he is.
Yeah.
I was just like...
Oh, yeah, no, they did a very good job.
Rich and famous contract
picking
now.
An actor who could be that punchable. And just that Instagram. Oh, my God.
So squicky.
Oh, God.
Yep. And, you know, kudos to Noah for the one thing that first made him go, oh, was what Dex did with the Black Lives Matter logo. Good, Noah.
Yeah.
You passed.
That's a very interesting Instagram. Just saying.
Yeah.
It's just a warning sign from far back. I'm just glad that Noah just noped out of there as soon as he saw it.
As he should have, because that's just like you had said earlier, Matt, that's very shady.
A lot of it works really well. I felt a little unsatisfied that other than deleting the Instagram, Dex doesn't seem to suffer any long-lasting consequences. And I get that we were close to the end of the movie and we had to wrap it up for our happily ever after, or happily for now.
I was going to say that's definitely a happily for now. Yeah, you're not wrong. The most he got was the other callback that I really enjoyed, the phone falling in the pool.
Yeah.
It's like, it's what you deserve, you douche.
But considering Will is a lawyer, like, comeuppance is just around the corner.
Yeah, but...
one would hope.
You would hope so. But I mean, that was the whole thing. Like, Will brought out his lawyer voice there. Matt and I were discussing this. I personally think Conrad was amazing. I mean, I've been a fan of Conrad since How to Get Away with Murder. Mm-hmm. I love what little I've seen of his Seymour.
I mean, I like it. I like it. It's just that I feel like the performance starts at like an 11 when it really should start at like a 7, maybe like a 6. I feel like it starts too cold. And I was just like, why is he even falling in love with you in the first place? Like, you don't even want to be near him.
It kind of feels like he doesn't want to be on the island at all.
Yeah, exactly. Fitzwilliam Darcy would not enjoy Fire Island, even if he was gay. And as somebody who is not big on the party scene in general, I'm just like, I feel you do. Like, there's that one moment where everyone's just screaming the countdown around him, and he's just like, oh God, kill me now, kill me now.
Even with the scene with Peppermint at the dance-off. Good scene, but I was like...
I love her.
He tried.
During... Like, I get what you're doing here, and it's good, because you can tell the guy can dance, and he's trying to dance badly. But it's like, is this supposed to endear you to him?
I mean, it's funny.
Yeah.
It is funny, but, like, if somebody tried to push me into doing something like that, I would probably not be into... I kind of feel like we had a missed opportunity to have 2 karaoke moments. Like, I absolutely loved Bowen's karaoke moment, but Conrad has an amazing voice, and I kind of wish that he'd gotten...
Oh, that is actually
that we'd gotten to see Will's vulnerability through him doing a song.
That would have been really good. Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't even think of that.
I mean, my first exposure to Conrad was as the voice of Hoyi in Over the Moon, and he sings with Philippa Sue, and they sound so good together.
I believe it. I still need to see that.
See, but he doesn't strike me as the character who would sing, like, at all.
Well, unless he's a shower singer.
I mean, I think that kind of ties into your assessment that he starts at an 11. Mm-hmm. I think it's fine if he starts at an 11, but then he immediately melts down to like a 6 without us getting to see the 9 and the 6.
And I do think...
What are numbers? I'm gay. I can't do math.
I mean, I think that's part of the issue with the fact that in this version of the story, it's only a week long. Whereas in Pride and Prejudice, it was months and months.
Yeah.
So, like, they definitely did have a lot less room for the kind of growth.
And it's hard to condense all of that, like, development and, like, the slow descent into warming up into 1 week, especially if you're trying to talk about months and months of material.
Yeah, but that is one thing that makes this a little more complicated in terms of an adaptation.
Exactly.
You got to squeeze a lot more character development into a much shorter time.
Like, see, once the ice melts and he does get a little vulnerable, I'm in. I am totally in. But it's like, it takes so long to get there. Half of you is just thinking, like, isn't this supposed to be romantic?
Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe it's just because I'm a sucker for a couple that shares bookworminess. That's why I could buy it a little more. Like, as soon as he realized that Noah was a reader, he was like, ooh. Like, or at least his version of ooh. Like, it's still a very subdued ooh.
It's like a huh.
Yeah.
Which, interesting.
I will give it this, though. The scene where they discuss Alice Munro is pretty great.
Mm-hmm. That was great. Like, exactly. I love a couple that is on the same level intellectually. Especially since that's not what you expect.
And it made me want to go out and read Alice Munro. I've never read Alice Munro. So
neither have I.
It's a Canadian author, so...
Oh!
Well, we had to read some of Alice Munro for university. Okay. It's been a while, but she does some pretty solid stuff, actually.
Okay, that's cool. I'm definitely intrigued. Yay, a movie that makes you want to read more books. Love that when that happens.
Yep.
That little moment of him throwing away the tiny ice cream cone.
He did that twice! Again, callback!
Don't do that! That's ice cream!
No, you don't waste ice cream in this house.
Yes, and it's just like, oh, you were so awkward.
Also, considering that they're talking about how all the prices are marked up and they're like denting cans and everything, that ice cream was probably like $10.
Like, I know you're rich, Will, but come on. Yeah, he keeps on ending up having to do that. It's just like, okay, dude, you clearly want some fucking ice cream. Be nice to yourself. They should have done a rule of
nice
3.
Pint of Ben and Jerry's.
He should have gotten his tiny ice cream cone at the end.
Yeah, they
Let
should have
him
done
have
a
his
rule
ice
of 3.
cream cone.
Yeah, you, because it seems like you've been through a lot, sir. It seems like you deserve the ice cream.
The ice cream is his chill pill, and he keeps not getting to take it.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's done with like half of it the first time we see him.
That is true. At least there's that.
He just doesn't get to
Have
finish.
you ever tried taking half a pill? Do you get the expected results from half a pill?
Not as much.
That's an interesting point. But also, can we talk about how that one scene where Noah just kind of rips into him was clearly trying to invoke the rainy scene in 2005? I was like, they was like, oh, you were doing this on purpose, Director On, and I applaud you for it, because that is one of my favorite movie scenes, period.
Best way to make everything 10 times more emotional. Add rain.
Yes.
Oh, I thought when he fell in the mud, he would come out like Colin Firth.
They should have done that. Oh my god. That would have been amazing.
There's just so much about this movie to love.
It's a fun time, and it's a fun time while also being intelligent, which is what a good Austen adaptation in general, I feel like, has to do. Also, I really loved Margaret Cho in this.
Yes.
Isn't she great?
She's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of felt bad that we didn't get to see more of her.
Yeah.
I kind of get it. Part of me is thinking less is more. But there's just so much of, like, her and Thomas Mateos, I think, just get these, like, little facial moments of facial acting that are just so good. When she discovers that Luke has a sex tape, the face that she makes is gold. I didn't even think it was possible for a human being to make that face.
Margaret Cho's a magical person that way.
All hail the show.
And I will say, I did love how she did have, like, in spite of all the wacky things she does in this movie, she also did kind of have her moment of seriousness that really neither Mr. or Mrs. Bennet really ever get. The moment to, like, be more than just the bickering couple that are actually making their daughters' lives miserable. She has her moments of being able to dispense some wisdom. And she even mentioned in one of the interviews that I had read about how, she kind of represents the elder gaze that a lot of the younger generation, are kind of seeking out, because for a lot of them, unfortunately, they don't really have somebody older to lean on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I love that this was a Pride and Prejudice about found family. Like any story can be improved with found family. Change my mind.
Fair.
And also just the fact that for especially gay men, there aren't a lot of elders for a reason. So it really was even extra important that they had Erin there for them. Especially since Noah even said, it's kind of true that she's the closest to a mom I've got.
Actually, when you find out that they actually cast an older gay man for that part, who had to drop out.
Oh, really? Who?
Oh.
There's a commentary track on Hulu if you ever.
Who did they cast?
I don't know, but they
they
cast
didn't say,
someone, and when you look at the way she delivers that speech is great, regardless.
Oh yeah.
But when you think about it, think about it as an older gay man saying that, saying what she says, it makes you want to cry.
Oh, it very much makes me want to cry. Like, it's already really emotional from that perspective. That like obviously lesbians got AIDS too, but
not rain on your.
No, it's okay. Just by virtue of this being the kind of retelling they went for, these are things we kind of need to talk about, I feel like.
And here I am trying to justify Margaret Cho out of the movie. No. But
you are not trying to justify Margaret Cho out of the movie.
No, but
if anything, it's just
great. She's got that queer elder energy, regardless of gender.
Exactly.
That's just fantastic. If it had to be someone else, great for Margaret Cho.
Hell yes.
this is a very tight movie. It's what, like
Definitely
an hour 40?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It's a very tight movie. They pack in a whole lot for such a tiny little movie.
Well, I mean, no adaptation can touch everything, but especially reading the book over this past week and a half, we said there was like a Collins analog who in this movie gets a couple of scenes, but you know, when you read the book, he's like a good third of it.
Oh yeah.
And
he's very present.
You know, like everybody gets to hit their points and you get across, you know, what they're trying to do, you know, Dex is the Wickham, you know, that sort of thing. But the thing that is interesting about this adaptation for me is that I wouldn't call it in name only, but there's enough parallels, but and I wouldn't call it surface level either, just because of the yes anding it does. But it almost like it didn't skim the book, but it took the paragraphs it needed and left the rest.
Yeah. I feel like if you didn't know it was a Pride and Prejudice adaptation, you weren't as familiar as us nerds are.
So it's like a pastiche for beginners almost. So it's their version of Great Illustrated Tales.
If you were putting this on AO3 as a fic, you would tag it Modern AU.
Yes.
Yes.
You would tag it probably rated M.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
And
yes, very much yes.
It's a transformative adaptation, which feels redundant, but it's transformative. And I'm thinking back because part of one of my research papers for my master's thesis, I ended up doing research into various forms of inclusive casting. And there was a conference where there were 4 kinds of casting lined up. There's the one that people traditionally know as colorblind, where it's like, oh, we take the best actor regardless of their identity for the job. And then there's like conceptual casting, and I would categorize this partially as conceptual casting because what it's doing is it's deliberately casting people who were not part of the original story in these roles to enhance the meaning of those roles.
Yep, I could definitely see that.
But there's also cross-cultural casting, which is, honestly, there's an argument to be made for all of these, because the other one's cross-cultural, which would be you take a story and you set it in a different culture to reframe it in a new context. So, I'm trying to think of a good example.
Kenneth Branagh's As You Like It.
Well, I guess. I mean, I have issues with that one because it doesn't have a lot of Japanese people in it.
Yeah, which is...
But I think you could probably to make a case for Pride and Prejudice for that one.
Oh, yeah, you could definitely make it.
Pride and Prejudice, any number of Bollywood adaptations
of which there are many.
Yes.
American property, non-Indian properties could work. But then there's also societal casting where you cast to reflect societal things. So like if you did demographic research and discovered that X number of lawyers in the United States are currently women and you're doing Legally Blonde, you would cast your ensemble to reflect that or something.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
I've been out of the academic game for almost 3 years, so a lot of my smartness has started to leak out my brain.
No, this is actually really fascinating. You are doing just fine.
But yeah, that's information from a conference that took place 30 plus years ago. So the discussion around casting and cultural diversity within casting has evolved significantly, but at the same time, if you break it down to those 4 building blocks, it still kind of feels like we're where we are still.
Yeah, this movie kind of feels like a miracle in that regard, in a weird way. Especially since when you remember Searchlight is owned by the Disney company.
Oh.
And they even kind of made like in some of those interviews I was reading, they even made comments about how I'm shocked that we got this by the mouse.
Everything.
Like they even said all they objected to was showing the genitalia, basically. They show all the butts they wanted though.
Well, I mean, that's why they have Hulu.
Yeah. That is exactly why they have Hulu, you're right. Actually, because it is really gratifying to know that Booster seemed to have a whole lot of power of how this movie turned out, which is rare for writers. And as of this recording, listeners, they are still in the midst of the writer's strike, so we definitely do need to celebrate just how much power over the narrative he clearly still had, because that doesn't happen with every writer.
You can only be so lucky.
No, it does not.
Pay the writers.
Say them.
Bastards.
The point where they had no last names. We only ever knew them by their first names. And this was probably in like reference to like Booster being a transracial adoptee.
He was adopted by a white family, so it is interesting how pretty much nobody has a last name in this movie.
Oh, damn, you're right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I only realized that when Shami pointed it out.
I mean, I kind of think that helps enhance the feeling of family for our Bennett analogs because, you know, in that regard, none of them need a last name because this is their family, and it would get a little bogged down if we had to learn last names for all of them. And I just think that's kind of like a vacation feeling.
Yeah. This is a
like,
very vacation-y movie.
This is Will. This is Will. He's the hot guy that I met on Fire Island for a week, and we had such a deep connection walking along the beach together, talking about books.
I can see that. I do really love how, because a lot of people do get the wrong idea that Lizzie is just like an angry character, but she's not. She's a lot of fun in the book and adaptations that get her. So I do love, again, how they kind of yes-anded that. It's like, okay, our Lizzie is a bit of a party animal while still being probably one of the smartest people in the room.
Yeah, I think the defining quality of any Elizabeth Bennet is that she has to be done with basically everybody around her and just wants to do what she wants to do, God damn it.
Yep.
I mean, that's the whole thing. He's like, I'm an independent person. It's a really big part of me. And that plays into it completely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually part of why I am kind of blown away and impressed that they didn't go for the traditional Pride and Prejudice ending with this. Like, yeah, you could definitely see Howie and Charlie having a long-standing committed relationship, but like both Will and Noah are just like, yeah, the whole monogamy, happily ever after thing isn't really for me. And I thought that was a really bold choice that was also right for these versions of the characters.
Yeah,
like, I can't think of another Pride and Prejudice that had the guts to do that.
I can't even think of a movie. No, I can think of two. But I can't think of a lot of movies that would even say, like, monogamy. Let's not do that.
Yeah, and we need more of that. Because, again, that was an active choice on Booster's part from what I've read of how, like, sure, there's a lot of people in the gay community that are big on the monogamy side of things and do kind of want the gay version of the white picket fence. But there's plenty that don't.
You know, there's an argument to be made on either side. Like, considering how much effort is put into denying queer people the same rights as heterosexual couples, like, you get it.
Yeah, of course.
Like, you want to be able to have that choice, basically. But then speaking as someone, I live in one of the few towns in the United States that has any legal recognition or protection for relationships that are more than two people. And even then, it's not much. And I'm still, you know, constantly in fear that this could never go any further than it's already gone. And also, it's very expensive to live here.
Yeah.
Even if I had somebody's house to crash in on Nantucket or something, I'm not going out to Nantucket. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to get out to Nantucket? Like, that's the closest analogy I can think of. Long story short, generally when a place is liberal enough to be progressive enough to accept the parts of queer culture that, you know, we're still fighting for, it's prohibitively expensive for, you know, the people who it matters most to.
Figures, right?
Amen.
Ugh. Again, this is why this story is evergreen.
Queer is gentrified.
Ugh.
Yeah. It is. It so is. You're so right. Which, again, that's part of why I do like that they decided to go that route, even though Lizzie and Darcy is forever one of my OTPs. But for this particular version, it's like, yeah, for one thing, you've only known each other like a week. And for another, that's clearly not what you guys are into. So let's just play it by ear, boys. Have at it. You danced to that Donna Summer song. That was perfect. God, the sunset shots in the scene are so gorgeous, too.
Everything that they shoot on the dock is just beautiful.
It really is. It's a very pretty looking movie, along with, in spite of some of the ugly things that do happen in it.
Well, that's life. What are you going to do?
Yeah, basically.
Life is ugly.
It can be, yeah.
Okay, Wesley, chill.
Tell me I'm wrong.
We can't. That's the sucky part.
If I did, I'd be selling something.
Oh, I did find this quote from Andrew On. It pretty much ties in with like how Austen and this version sort of like folded the seams together. It kind of like proves. I think there is something in the way that Jane Austen describes judgment and assessment that feels really gay. I think that as queer people, we have to learn very quickly how to assess someone.
Oh.
Because it is a survival skill. We have to be able to tell if someone's going to accept us for who we are or potentially harm us because of who we are. And I think that in some ways, we almost take it too far. We use that skill of judgment against each other, and that can keep us from forging really significant relationships, whether they're romantic or platonic. What Austen explores in Pride and Prejudice is how class distinctions keep apart people who actually feel so perfect for each other. That Joel decided to do an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice within the queer community is brilliant.
Yeah, definitely, because there is something to the whole idea that part of why we can be a little judgy is a matter of surviving.
It's a coping mechanism. It's your defense.
Absolutely. And with Noah especially, like, it keeps on kind of keep coming up how, yeah, you built this wall around yourself to keep yourself safe, but are you really happy this way? And it's not even, because it could have easily come off as Howie judging him for not wanting the monogamy that he does, and they were clearly very careful to not make it that way, thank God. But it's just like, yeah, sure, you can have all the sex you want. That's not the issue. The issue is you're not really letting anybody in the way that matters. I mean, I'm sorry.
I mean, a tiny part of me looked at that and wondered at the very start of it if that meant Noah was a romantic homosexual. A romantic, one word, not a romantic.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, wait, no, this is a Pride and Prejudice adaptation. We're not going to get ace rep like that, except maybe from Mary.
I can very much see that from Mary. Though maybe not necessarily Max.
No.
Yeah, no. Max definitely wants somebody to... Max seems like the kind of queer who wants somebody to cuddle with him.
Yes.
Give Max a boyfriend.
Tell him that it's going to be okay. Max needs comfort.
Yes, he needs... You know what he needs? He needs, like, a hot English professor boyfriend.
And another thing I really do love is that they acknowledge that Noah isn't 100% right either.
Because, yeah, like, I do feel like the best Pride and Prejudice adaptations do acknowledge that both wrong, he's more wrong, but you are wrong as well, reader insert.
It's like, he's got to stick all the way up his butt, you've got to stick, like, 1 inch up your butt.
Yeah.
Well...
Go for it. I knew you were going to say something. Go for it.
No,
Let it out, Matt.
No, I can't say it.
Say it.
Listen, with this movie, we have dealt with some of the explicit stuff. It's okay.
I can't because it's gonna end up in the thing, and I still need to find a job.
Okay, fair enough.
I
will grant you that. Best of luck with that. Job hunting sucks.
I'll drink to that.
We all do.
And not bottomless mimosas because those poor boys.
No.
I miss mimosas. I'm on antidepressants and I can't have alcohol anymore.
Oh, that sucks.
What kind?
Escitalopram.
Oh, God. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, that whole flashback scene was such a mood as somebody who has worked food service.
As somebody who has seen the commentary, they actually were going to have flashbacks for everybody.
Oh, that would have been interesting, especially if it fleshed out Max a little more. Like we said, that's like our one thing.
I do a lot of research to do these things.
Yeah, no, and that's great. Like, I definitely try to do that too. It makes for more interesting conversations. Yeah, overall, yeah, this was fun. It is definitely going to be on my list of favorite Pride and Prejudice adaptations, of which there are many, as we discussed. Any other final thoughts?
I hope all these actors get more work, and it's nice to see queer people play queer roles. Like, I don't believe every queer role has to be played by a queer actor, but it's so nice.
Yeah, yes, it is nice. With that said, stop outing people who are playing queer roles, guys.
We're talking about you, Heartstopper.
That sucked. I said it when I first saw it, I'll say it again now. Somebody needs to write Joel Kim Booster a big fat check for his next thing. Because this is great.
Fund his project.
Honestly,
after the strike.
Yes, after the strike.
Of course.
After the strike.
Hey, AMPTP, do the right thing.
Great movie, by the way, if you haven't seen it.
I'll get to it.
Part of why we do these podcasts is so we can actually watch more things that we need to
Sam,
watch.
you'd love it, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure I will.
But yeah, this was certainly not a perfect retelling, but a very solid one that I think brought back a lot of the most important parts, translated through a point of view that definitely needs more representation. Go see it. It's on Hulu and it's great. It's just nice that it's just like this little indie vibes movie that's still got like a really decent check to it. So that's nice.
Go see it. Go see the rest of Andrew Ann's work. It's awesome and gay and all the good things.
All right. Anyone got stuff to plug?
I am the host of 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the Movie Connections podcast where we discover all the ways Star Wars surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us. And I am also on YouTube and social media as La Femme Fictionale. And also, please be nice to gay people, please.
It's Pride
I said
Month.
that last time, but please.
Just
It's
generally.
Pride Month and
Be nice to us in Pride Month and every other month.
And it's scary
We
out
have a
there
hard
right
time.
now. It's scary out there. It's part of why I liked this movie.
You can find me on Letterboxd, Matt the Movie Guy, where you can tease me for not seeing as much Kurosawa as I'd like, even though, thanks to Sam's podcast, I'm making sure that that's remedied. And we can talk and chat about movies, gay, straight, and otherwise. And, yeah.
And actually, this podcast will probably be covering some Kurosawa as well, because he's done a fair amount of Shakespeare adaptations.
Woohoo!
And once again, Shamila's GoFundMe is still up, and we could still really use your help. For those of you who missed it, she was recently the victim of employment fraud that was targeting disabled people looking for work. She has a GoFundMe. Please donate what you can. As for me, you can find me at Faye Riviera on Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok. Additionally, I was recently the voice of Candace in Fireblast Studios' The Platypus's New Groove, a fan project made by a friend of the show, Micah Hirsch, where Phineas and Ferb crosses over with the Emperor's New Groove. And you can check that out on YouTube. Coming up next, for our Juneteenth episode, we will be covering both the book and film version of Nella Larsen's Passing. See you then, and remember, stories gain power in each retelling.
So let's dance, let's dance, let's dance, let's dance, let's dance, let's dance tonight.
With the Gardners, they were always on the most intimate terms. Darcy, as well as Elizabeth, really loved them, and they were both ever sensible of the warmest gratitude towards the persons who, by bringing her to Derbyshire, had been the means of uniting them.